Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. It was properly posted on May 15th, and our prayer and pledge will be led by Emergency Management Director David Barnes.
Let's pray. Father God, we're again truly grateful for the opportunities that you give us to serve others, Father, and to gather together and to discuss and to deliberate, and, Father, to make decisions for the good of others. I lift up the commissioners and others in positions of authority today, Father, that those decisions will be based upon your will and the common good. Lord, overnight we're again reminded of a situation in Oklahoma where your display of power is just unbelievable at times, Father. But we thank you for the provision and protection that you provide. And we lift those families and the folks that were directly impacted in a negative manner up to you, Lord. We ask for comfort, strength, and guidance for them. Help us in the course of our duties to be prepared to help in any way possible and to be seen as encouragers. Lord, we again just ask that you would guide our thoughts, our words, our deeds, that would be about the business that you've called us and equipped us to do. And Father, that we would look to you in all things. We ask this in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, David. Item 4 is our minutes of May 10th.
Move in.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
5 through 14 are the consent docket items.
Move the consent docket subject to individual consideration.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
District 1, items 15 through 18.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Items 15 through 17. These are we got some money from the federal government to complete our Crutchfield project, thank heaven. And so this is primarily what this is all about. So I move the item.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. This
Aye.
is 15 through 17, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now Joe, I believe, wants to talk on 18.
Yes, sir. Good morning, Commissioners. On item 18, we actually need to hold off on that until the infrastructure portion of the meeting. This proposed donor agreement is not a recommendation of the Infrastructure Committee. As a matter of timing, the Infrastructure Committee was not able to do that. Therefore, one of the three offices was going to put it on, and so Commissioner Johnson elected to put it on for your consideration. But we need to wait until some of the other items are determined before taking this up.
So move it to the heel of the docket, or does it need to be before that?
Commissioner, it would need to be following the proposed lease with the DHS. The Arnall and the Blumenthal should follow the lease if that is the course that the board determines to go.
Essentially make it item 32.
Okay, well, without objection, we'll do that?
Yes.
Okay. And then item 19 is to receive the state auditor report. This is the Oklahoma County statutory report from the treasurer.
Well, we'll receive it.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
District 3, items 20 through 22.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple different items. First one being item 20, and that is just to make some county properties available for use by the family law section of the Bar Association because they're going to be having an annual Trial Advocacy Institute. Move the item.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye. The second one is we are putting in a roundabout on 178th and Meridian, and this is one of the newer things that we're trying in the county to help with the ease flow of traffic and also avoid four-way stops, and we just need to acquire some of the land around that area, and that's all outlined, and so I would move approval of item 21.
I'll second that, but let me just make a comment. I remember when some brilliant person came here many years ago and put a roundabout on 23rd Street and I-35, and it caused so many problems. They had to take the roundabout out. So I'm hoping that this is going to work. I'll second that motion.
I hope you're right.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Yeah, that's something that as Oklahomans we're not as used to as they are in some part of the countries, but it seems to be moving that direction. So appreciate your support. Item number 22 is to approve our district attorney's office to attend meetings and represent the BOCC, working towards establishing a local criminal justice coordinating committee. Most of us are familiar with the Citizens Task Force that took place in Oklahoma City and made several suggestions regarding our criminal justice system. And one of the things that they want to do is set up a committee of stakeholders that will continue to advise and observe, make recommendations, measure outcomes, things of that nature. They'll be putting that together, and they've asked that the county be involved, and so we would just like to approve the district attorney's office to attend those meetings so that we can stay involved with that very important process. Move the item.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Item 23 is a standard maintenance contract with the election board for their burster cut sheet cutter.
Move the item.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Also standard maintenance contract on item 24 with the election board and Southwest Solutions maintenance for their Megastar card file. That's what stores the election voter registration forms.
Right. Mr. Chairman, this is contingent upon the outcome of the funds. Okay. All right. All right. Thank you. Move the item.
Second.
Well, I appreciate you bringing that up. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Stacy, items 26 and 25.
Item 25, as you know, the jail lower roof is under construction now, and this is our first change order to add some exhaust curbing to the roof for the HVAC system down there. Would move the consideration of the change order.
Move the item.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And then the second item is for you guys to sign the plans and approve the project moving forward to restore the HVAC in the kitchen area of the jail so we can get the kitchen back up and running.
Move the item.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you for that. Juvie Bureau's got item 27. This is a continuation lease. It's a routine third year of a 4-year lease.
Joe, do you have anything to add to this? Where is he? He's gone. Oh.
Right there.
Okay, thank you. Move the item.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Item 28, I've finally gotten around to my appointment to the Board of Adjustment. It's Charlie Phillips. We're all familiar with her. She's been very dedicated to the county and continues to be a source of information for several of us, and I would proudly appoint her.
Thank you.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Item 29 is reports from the Infrastructure Committee. Somebody want to start us off?
Well, Joe's going to talk about that. He's the chairman of that committee.
Good morning, Commissioners. As you recall, this proposed project, the repurposing of the shelter, was discussed many months ago. Back, Judge Jacobson was an integral part of this before his passing, Judge Davis. I think everybody that I've talked to on the committee or with my own commissioner believes that this is a good idea and a much-needed project. Our Infrastructure Committee has met 21 times. During those 21 meetings, the discussion of repurposing the shelter was on 14 of those agendas. So it is not something that the committee rushed through. It is not something that we took lightly. It is something that we worked with due diligence in order to try to come to you with a recommendation that was sound. What you have before you today is actually two recommendations. You have the one item, and I'm kind of talking about them all together because they all are related. This item, 29, is a recommendation from the committee to deed the property over to the Department of Human Services in order for them to reconstruct and renovate and operate the shelter in its new manner, which is to serve children and families here in Oklahoma County. Now, this recommendation would require you to determine that the property is no longer needed for a county purpose per the statute. It is also the recommendation of the committee that while we didn't come up with the language or suggest to you language that you would develop a reversionary clause in the event that the property was no longer used by the state for a purpose related to the juvenile code, that it would revert back to the county. In the event that you determine not to give the property away, the other items could be discussed. Those are two donor agreements. We have two very generous donors that have agreed to work either with DHS should you deed the property over, or work with the county in order to make sure that this building is renovated and able to be used to serve the children and families. Now, I will say that the lease agreement that we had proposed is my understanding that if we get that far, DHS may have a counter proposal today, which we have not seen. We haven't heard what those proposed terms are. So it would be probably a little lengthy and may necessitate a recess in order to review those documents before you would continue on, in my opinion. But again, long meeting, 14 in fact, in which we worked with Sarah, who I want to thank, Gretchen on the DA staff has been extremely helpful, Stacy. So I think that the committee members and Gretchen and all of the county staff have worked extremely hard to try to make this project happen.
I can agree to that because he's not been in the office.
Okay. We have Judge Davis here. It's good to see you, Your Honor, and welcome back. Do you care to have any comments you'd like to share with us before we go further?
Pass on that opportunity. Thank you. I was also the one that asked for a chair. I've learned that standing is harder on my heart than walking and sitting. So if you don't mind, I'd
please grab the microphone. Can you grab the microphone?
Just grab the mic. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was a really good summary of where we're at. I appreciate the recognition of Judge Jacobson. When I went out this fall with my cancer issues, Judge Jacobson picked up the ball and really ran with it, and it's missed every day. Sarah then has picked up the ball after that and continued to move it forward. Everyone's worked hard on this. I think it was over a year ago when Dr. Shropshire and I had the opportunity to come and talk to you about the committees that had worked so hard to put the vision and the concept together. I think we addressed then that we had so many community partners, Casey Family, OU, United Way, North Care, all the judicial partners, the judges, the DAs, the public defenders, CASA, Lawyers for Children. I mean, we just have had a huge amount of input on this. Since then, we knew that whether or not this came to fruition, we wanted to start this direction. And so we were lucky enough for Chesapeake to lease the building directly east of the juvenile center to DHS for $1 a month for 2 years, which is what we kind of envisioned the remodel would take. And we've started. And we now have 19 families there. We're serving a little less than 50 children. It's all evidence-based. OU's working with us on the statistics. It kind of encapsulates two of the things that we want to put in the shelter, which is to put our best services at the beginning of a case so that we can try and get children and families either reunited faster, or if we have to make that tough decision to go to termination and adoption, those faster. And then also with the better quality intentional visitation. And so those are really the true primary components of this. The Chesapeake building has been great. It's not near the size of this shelter. And so as we want to expand this to be kind of the practice for Oklahoma County, we're looking for bigger space. Everyone's worked hard on this, and I appreciate all the hard work. The lease is still not ready to be signed. I think it's still in negotiation stage, but it's a possibility. As a practical matter, 3 parties, state, county, and the private side, is more difficult to work with than 2 parties. So if the commission decided to transfer the property to DHS, then it cuts it down from 3 parties to 2 parties. And so I think it may expedite the process a little bit if we can get the transfer. The building needs a lot of work. I think everyone acknowledges that. The interior remodel is about $1.5 million, and then we figured out that the roof and the HVAC needed to be done. So even if you don't transfer the building and ultimately the lease doesn't go through with DHS, you've got a building that has roof and HVAC issues and a lot of money that's going to be need to spend on it to get it to where it would be something ready to use. So we appreciate your time and your attention to this. We would love to have the opportunity to remodel the building, and if DHS if DHS decides it doesn't want to continue to use it this way, then give it back to the county. That would be the plan. And like I said, we're never trying to do anything under the table. We're just trying to do something that is unique because it's private money going into a county-owned building with the state leasing it. So we appreciate your attention. Thank you.
I'm under the weather, as is I think Commissioner Johnson, not feeling good. So please, for anybody here, don't misread into my droopy eyes, or I'm just trying not to cough. So I just have a question though. Do you have a specific recommendation of these proposals that are before us on the agenda today?
I would prefer the transfer, just because, like I said, I think it would
just give the building.
It protects. What I've heard is a lot of the concerns of the county, rightfully so. Not that there's so much concern about the first couple of years during the remodel or the next couple of years when everything is brand new, but what's the exposure to the county 10 years down the road? Well, nobody has a crystal ball. There may, at that point in time, you've got a building that's old that's been remodeled, but there may be some expenses, and so the county's concerned about their potential expenses down the road. Well, if the county has transferred the building to DHS, then that's DHS's problem, not the county's. If DHS ultimately decides, again, not to use it for the purposes that it's been used as a shelter and now as a visitation and family resource center, then it would go back to the county. So preference is a transfer.
Okay. Do you have any questions?
I don't. I personally love this idea. Everybody that has talked to me about it, you did, and now I love the idea. I just don't want the county to be in a mess, and because that's my job.
Sure.
Is to make sure that the county comes out whole on this thing, and believe me, I absolutely support this, but I really hope that we will do everything we can to make sure that the people's money is taken care of adequately. I understand that the legal description of this property needs to be taken. Joe, you're going to talk about that?
Correct, yes. Commissioners, I failed to mention, it was pointed out that the legal description that is contained in this item, as well as in the lease, is incorrect. So if you were to approve the transfer, I would ask that you would do that pending the development of the correct legal description of the property that is to be transferred. I've spoken with Stacy about it. I informed Sarah yesterday that the legal was not correct, so they are aware that would be an issue that we would need to work through going forward, either on the lease or the transfer. Stacy indicates it would probably take about 2 weeks to make sure that we get that legal description down pat, so that everything is clear with what property has been transferred. But other than that, if you have any questions, either on this item or the lease, I'd be happy to address those. Questions about the donor agreement should probably be addressed to either Sarah Edwards or to Gretchen. But
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Joe, you get these questions because I missed out on the opportunity to question the judge, and as an attorney, I relish all of those opportunities that I have to be able to question a judge.
Right, you're just picking on somebody who's not a judge and not an attorney. I understand.
No, with one of the things that the judge brought up was just some of the concerns that the county has with the lease. One of the things has been that DHS has proposed a self-imposed cap of $160,000 per year that they would put into M&O, and then anything above that, the county would be responsible for. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, let me address it this way. under the current lease with the Department of Human Services, they are responsible for all costs related to that building. Initially, the committee voted to recommend to the board that we essentially propose the same terms to DHS. In order to try to work with DHS, they came back, indicated that they couldn't have those same terms going forward. We have attempted to work with them, and yes, you're correct. DHS proposes $160,000 a year cap on their costs associated with operating the building. Any unknowns above that, whether it would be just a routine operation or perhaps a significant cost associated with, say, elevators, roof, et cetera, even though the roof will now be new, would be the responsibility of the county. So it's kind of an unknown. What we did, as you know, Randy, in the last infrastructure meeting, and the recommendation that's before the board with regard to the lease, is cap DHS's cost at $160,000 per year for the first 5 years, and then there's an escalator in what DHS would pay in years 6 through 25 of the lease, and that is based in part on CPI. However, there's a 3% minimum increase each year in what DHS's contribution. Of course, with escalating costs, the county's unknown costs would also go up as well. So yes, that is a concern, but in an effort to try to move this project forward, I think the committee tried to work with DHS and at least get something to the board to look at for follow-up.
And one of the other things that the committee looked at in the lease, you talked about those escalating factors. You talked about, well, one of the things that we talked about in the committee was also having monthly reports so that the county could just kind of have an idea of where DHS was. If we go with a transfer of the property with a reversionary clause, the county is not going to be on the hook for any of the maintenance. And essentially what we're talking about is the terms almost like they are now, where DHS is responsible for all of whatever the cost might be, and the county doesn't have to worry about monthly reports. We don't have to worry about trying to budget for an unknown at the end of the year once DHS has reached their cap. Is that correct?
Well, in part, but as you'll recall, and I think as all the commissioners, because you've been visited with since this project was discussed over a year ago, is that this initially was proposed as a no cost to the county contract. So in part, that's true. However, if we give the property away, I mean, theoretically, I could say you're not investing any money in it, so it's no cost, but it is a county-owned property, so there could be some cost there. But yes, you're correct. The county wouldn't have to worry about trying to budget for an unknown or set aside some money that may or not be used if we were to give it away. But the flip side of that is DHS has indicated that they could spend more money on a building they own. However, as I'm sure we're all watching the news, the state is in a severe budget crisis. So I think your point on the reversionary language is well taken.
Thank you. Ms. Fleming.
Yes, ma'am.
We filled out those forms. Do you mind if I see?
I certainly do not.
So I've never been here before. I was yanked out of the closet as a donor at our last meeting, and I wanted to speak up on behalf of the donors. I come from a CASA background, and I've been a CASA advocate for over 15 years. And I got involved with the project because it seemed like an opportunity to really make systemic changes to the way we do business. And initially, we weren't really able to speak to whether this would make a difference or not. Front-loading services, bringing a team of multidisciplinary people to the table every week to discuss cases. Well, since things have been delayed and delayed, we do have results. And we do have 2 families in temporary reunification in under 6 months. I mean, that's unbelievable. And when you look at the trauma to the kids by staying in the system, anything shorter to achieve permanency makes a big difference in their lives. So as a donor, I couldn't be more excited about the Arnall Foundation stepping up. I've been so jealous of Tulsa. They've got foundations that have spent lots of money for their kids in custody and their welfare. And really, as an individual donor, my husband and I do the best we can, but Arnall has made this a key factor in where they intend to spend their money. And for them to step up with $1.5 million is just a gift from heaven. I mean, it's an opportunity that we'll never have again. And what they are doing, and what you can see from who's in the room, is they are bringing people from across the county together to talk about issues and problems that can help our children. We have Debbie Hampton from United Way. We have North Care. We have OU. We have CASA. You have people that are working together to solve problems for your kids. And in addition to those that are serving on our team, we are working with substance abuse providers, mental health providers, system-wide to impact our families. We haven't had this kind of opportunity. We don't read about these successes in the papers, and I believe strongly that this project will make a difference. Now, when it came, I sat through probably 12 infrastructure meetings, and when the issue came up that the air conditioners and the roof were in disrepair, and that the cost of that was going to come out of the $1.5 million, and the project would just have to spend less, I couldn't bear that. To have Arnall, Sue Ann Arnall, giving us $1.5 million, I want this place to be the top-notch place for families and children that we pitch to them. So my husband and I are paying for not very fancy things like air conditioners and roof, not two of them. And we don't want to do this, but we believe in this project. And I will say, and I've spoken with the Arnall Foundation, the lease negotiations are not going to work. If this deed and reversionary is not agreed to, we really are going to have to move on down the road literally and look for other property. We won't have the opportunity we have with this building to be next door to the courthouse, to be a size that we can grow in, to have projects for foster families to learn from. It will be different, but we will not sit and watch the lease negotiations any further, and I just wanted to be sure you knew that. Do you have any questions?
No, ma'am, you were quite succinct.
Thank you.
Well, maybe before, Frank, just hang on just a second. We recognize everybody's time here, and I want to say first off that I admire every one of you. I appreciate all of your time and investment. It's our job to do this. It's not yours, and you have voluntarily put yourself in an above and beyond situation, and I thank you. I've probably heard from more citizens on this issue than on any other in quite a while. Maybe not ever, but on a positive thing and versus a negative thing, and so that was nice. And I appreciated that citizens took time to inform me about things I didn't know about and gave me a more rounded picture. My issue has never been about being against the project, but about whether or not the legality of us being able to give away the property in particular. We have faced an issue with a county property before with another governmental entity, and you would not believe the nightmare we went through on the legalities of it, and I believe through that process we even became aware of things in the law, maybe some old dusty statutes around and stuff that made options available that we wish we had known earlier. And so we're better prepared for this in spite of however excruciating it might be for you to have gone through this time than it was for our first rodeo, because it wasn't even anywhere near as significant of a property as this, and it was just, you wanted to pull your hair out. It was awful. So I just thought I would poll, do you to have a leaning one way or the other? Do you care to state it, and we might be able to save these people some time?
Well, I certainly want to save them some time, but we can't afford to rush into this thing. I am supportive, as I have always been, but I just have to make sure that those legalities are in place. I just have to do that, and I'm so sorry if that creates a problem for anybody, but we can't play with the county taxpayers' money. you know, that, and I love you for joining in and helping with this project. There's no better project in the world than a project that involves our future, and that's what your project does. It involves our future. But we won't have a future if we don't make sure that we do this thing legally. And so that's where I am.
Let me just ask the audience here, is there anyone who wishes to speak against the transfer of this to DHS? Or in proponent of another suggested item on here, another proposal? So everyone in the crowd, it's fair to say, is in favor of the transfer? Okay. I just wanted to make sure we had heard from all sides.
Mr. Chairman, can we hear something from our legal department?
Sure.
Are you, what, did she leave?
She's back there.
Okay. Good morning, ma'am.
Did you have a specific question, or did you just want me to provide an overview of Section 349 and its applicability?
349 and
Okay. We've used 19 OS Section 349 over the years from time to time. That statute is limited to the transfer of county-owned property to other certain governmental entities. It would never apply to a private person. It's very broad, and it authorizes the county to transfer such property so long as it's no longer needed for a county purpose and for an amount of consideration to be determined by the Board of County Commissioners. In the past, I know Mr.
I think they're saying they can't hear you. Maybe if you pull that mic closer. Thank you.
Better. Test.
Is that better, Leanne?
It's not working at all?
Hello?
There you go.
Yeah.
I've got to get closer. So, brief history. You have used this section to transfer the OSU property. That was above fair market value. You have used this provision to transfer property to Boeing. That was at fair market value. And you have transferred property at zero cost. So you're not curtailed. It could be zero to over fair market value. And then no longer needed for a county purpose. That's a factual determination to be made by the Board of County Commissioners. In this instance, this particular building has been used, excuse me, I think I'm the same thing you do, by DHS for a shelter for, I think it's been well over 30 years, maybe closer to 40. The legislature a couple of years ago issued an edict saying we don't like shelters anymore. We want them to go away and go towards foster care, and we think that existing shelters should be repurposed. They didn't say repurposed to what. You have a suggestion here, very good suggestion. So in that, it is no longer needed for a shelter, which was the primary and prior county purpose. You still arguably, and I stress arguably, are under a lease with DHS. The proposed lease was an amended lease, and I think you have an additional 20 years on that lease. So it's still arguably tied up for a certain period of time. So I think that you're entitled to make those part of your consideration or your deliberation as to whether it's still needed for a county purpose. Were there any other questions as to the legality?
How do you feel about this?
Commissioner, I think that you have a pro and con situation. I think that in the back of my mind, it would be the future dollars and cents as to the county. And if you continue with a lease, what your future cost would be versus transferring it under a reversionary clause and no longer having to think about those potential future costs. I kind of analyze it in that mind, and I don't want to sway you in either way. This is absolutely the court's decision. I have no problem, and I strongly suggest that a reversionary clause, if the board goes with a transfer, be put in place. I think it's safe to make it fairly broad, so you're not tying up DHS to some teeny minutia particular purpose, because all projects seem to broaden or change. And you could put something as only for so long as the property is used solely for its lawful activities pursuant to the Oklahoma Justice Juvenile Code. That code is very broad. It would give them the opportunity to do a lot of different things with that structure, but not so minute that, for instance, so long as they're serving foster children, you could swoop in. I don't think this board has any inclination or wants to do something like that. But if, for instance, the new juvenile justice center is developed in another part of town, and this is no longer going to be used for that purpose at that building, the county would have a right to take it back and then work with that real estate. So, and I'm assuming, I don't know, I haven't heard much argument from the other side about a reversionary clause. I think it's fair. We could open that up, but it's just negotiating in front of the Board of County Commissioners at that point. I don't know if Stacy has any certain, he deals a lot with our real estate issues.
No, I think you hit it pretty well.
All right.
Thank you so much. You did just what I needed you to do. Yours back there.
Does DHS want to speak?
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
My name is Jack Ely. I'm a lawyer for DHS. I can speak from my director on down. DHS has no issue at all with coming up with a reversionary clause that would work in the county's favor and benefit, but also allows us the freedom to perform the services that are deemed necessary for the Oklahoma County's children and families. Sorry, I have it. But, so, from a transfer standpoint, DHS is all in favor of it.
I think they're having trouble hearing you too.
Okay, I'm sorry. From a transfer standpoint, DHS would favor the transfer subject to the reversionary clause.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure you had no objection. Randy, did you have?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple different things.
If I might, Randy, just so the board is aware, with regard to the transfer, the committee did make a recommendation or instruct the staff to reach out to OMES in regard to perhaps a property swap, and the state did not have any properties under OMES control that were available for switch. The only other properties that the county had identified to look at belonged to either the commissioners of land or the state. So in just trying to make sure you have a full and complete picture with regard to the transfer, we did explore the option of a transfer, and that just didn't come to fruition. If I might, just one other thing, and we're not there yet, but in the donor agreements, there are certain provisions there that the donor would have a representative at the table as we move forward in this project. As the judge mentioned earlier, and I think her point is very well taken, that it's easier to have an agreement with two people as opposed to three. I voted in the committee against the recommendation. My stated reason was we did not identify or bring to you language on the reversionary clause. However, upon listening to the discussions and taking into consideration, I think, the toll that it would take on our staff to try to manage this project, the risk that it would put the county at, recognizing that the judge is right, it's easier to go with two groups at the table. I'm thinking that perhaps not everyone understands the legal requirements the county has to operate under with regard to projects of this nature, with regard to competitive bidding, the selection process, how the money is transferred, controlled, et cetera, who actually gets to make the final decisions. I would, if I could, change my recommendation and suggest to you all that you do transfer the property with the corrected legal description as well as a reversionary clause. It does appear, I was just handed a copy of DHS's counter proposal to the lease that's on. It does appear you may have some difficulty in negotiating that language as well. So just because you may vote to give the property to DHS for a very good purpose, you may well have some difficulties coming up with some acceptable language there. So just so you know, I think it's best for the county that we would go ahead and transfer this.
Did you have something else to say to that?
We can't hear you.
To the microphone, please.
I'm Sarah Edwards. I'm a director with Crow and Dunleavy and a community volunteer on this project. I've been helping almost from day one. I'm happy to answer any questions. I feel like it's all been summed up pretty well. I believe a transfer is the cleanest route. And again, I believe under the lease, the property is to be used for any lawful purpose with the juvenile code, which the reference is changed now to the children and juvenile code. I recommend that would be a good reversionary clause. And since the property is right next to the county courthouse, I see this as the ideal use for this property. And do you have any questions?
No, thanks. I just thought you had an answer to, or rebuttal to his comments, so.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Randy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you everyone for being here today, because I know that there's myriad other places that you'd probably rather be on a Wednesday morning, but we're here practically every Wednesday morning, so you're welcome every time. Two stories, one personal, one kind of a public story. Number one, when I was a brand new lawyer, one of the first things that I got involved in was Lawyers for Children, and going to the show cause dockets on a weekly basis. And my clients were children, most of which were at the shelter next door. And it was the best of times and the worst of times, because these were deprived children, and a lot of them were very scared and nervous and had no idea why I was there and why I would be looking out for their interest. And yet I had some clients, when I had a second grade boy that found out I was his attorney, and he was ready to sue somebody for taking something of his on the playground. I said, we'll look into that. Let's get this. So it was, and I was the most rewarding cases of my legal career, 16 years, were involved with Lawyers for Children, and a couple of girls that I represented in the shelter. We tried for 2 years, reunification. We finally had to terminate, and that was a fight. The day before Thanksgiving, the mom relinquished her rights. They were adopted by family members. They moved to a new location. The oldest one of those girls just recently graduated from college, is married. Because of the work that people like you are doing in the community, we have success stories like that. And I'm so excited that we will continue to use that building for those types of success stories. Second, here's the public story. This is what we do here at Oklahoma County, in Oklahoma City, and the surrounding areas, Edmond, Moore, Village, whatever it is. We come together and we support these types of things. I'll never forget one of the first projects that I worked on here, and many of the staff and the commissioners worked on, was the acquisition of the old General Motors plant and repurposing that, and then transferring ownership of that to the United States Air Force. And I'm telling you, one of the reasons that Tinker remains strong as the largest single-site employer in our state is because the citizens of Oklahoma County stepped up and said, we want to buy that building and we want to give it to Tinker so that they continue to grow and serve the citizens. I see this as the exact same type of project. And so I know that Commissioner Vaughn in District 3 is very proud to support it. And again, appreciate all of the hard work of the committee members. Mr. Blau's done a great job at chairing that committee, and all of the citizens that were there week after week. So thank you. So on that note, I will move item 29, which is a transfer of the property to DHS subject to a reversionary clause, and with a recommendation that the reversionary clause be drafted somewhat like the language that was identified, and that would be for any lawful purposes within the Children and Juvenile Justice Code, subject to a correct legal description.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I must talk.
Please.
There's no way I could not vote for the transfer. I'm looking out here at all my friends, and right now they're smiling at me, but but I just want to talk about Mr. Grau's statement about the building for Tinker. We didn't have any private donors for that building, so there was a glitch there that we're having to deal with today that we've never done before since I've been here 10 years. So I just want to say that because this is awesome that we would have people invest their resources in trying to help make Oklahoma County better by preventive measures. And I appreciate you so very, very much. I don't know what all you do, but I know a bunch of what you do. And I don't have the kind of money that some of these folks are investing, but I give my 20 cents. And I appreciate you very, very much, and I'll second that motion.
All in favor? Say aye.
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 Congratulations. Thank you for your patience. You're welcome to stay, or you're free to go if you've had all this you want.
Don't leave. Frank. Mr. Chairman, can we take a 2-minute break?
Let me just do that for you so you don't get anything.
Good to see.
I didn't mean to cut you off. I just do that. I want you to say.
What you gonna call him? Okay, I'm sorry.
Judge, thank you for your time today. Okay, Randy. Did you have a motion? Or did I read into what you were saying?
Oh, no. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that because of the approval of item 29, that makes moot items 30, 31, and 18, which we had moved from previously on the docket or agenda. And so I think we would strike. So I move to strike items 30, 31, and 18.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Sorry.
All right, item 32 from the sheriff.
Move the item.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Treasurer has items 33 through 36. Butch, you got anything you want to say about any of them?
Not really, Commissioner. They're the standard annual agreements. 3 of them are for copiers and 1 of them is for our mail machine. 3 of them will be, till the copiers will be, and the mail machine will be paid out of our resale property, and 1 copier will be paid out of our general fund.
Is there a motion? Is there a motion to approve them all?
Yes. Oh.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is there a motion to approve the claims?
Move the claim.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
There's no change to the blanket.
Move the blanket.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any citizens now left to be heard? Seeing none, Commissioner comments, District 1?
No, sir, I'm talking about.
Randy?
Well, while they're talking, let me go back. No, I forgot what I want to say. Thank you, staff. You guys are awesome people. I appreciate you doing what you do to make sure we make the right decisions up here. There's no way that any of us could do all the work that you do and then sit up here and make a decision. So, thank you so very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. That gave me a moment to confer with our council, and I'm going to move to reopen item 29 because in my lengthy motion, I failed to state that the board makes a finding that the property is no longer needed for county purposes, which is required under that section of Title 19. So I would move to reopen item 29 for the purposes of amending my motion.
Gretchen, Joe, somebody come to the microphone.
If it will assist the board in determining the amount of consideration, the prior history with prior leases with DHS has paid 0 rent to the county for about, I want to say, 20 years. Prior to that, they paid fair market rent for a period of 10 or 12 years. So your prior history is 0 revenue from the property. And I think that's what they anticipate.
Is that what we're voting on?
May I ask a question, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
All right. Thank you, counsel. Are you suggesting or recommending that the board make a finding at this point regarding good and valuable consideration of $10 be exchanged?
That would support the agreement and make it legal. Yes.
Okay, we're also going to work on the legal description for these properties.
Correct.
Right. The property may need to be surveyed, Commissioner, so we've got an exact property description, and so that will need to be done. I'm hearing that might take about 2 weeks.
Okay.
In normal real estate transactions, in order for it to be sort of supported by consideration, the standard language is $10. It used to be 1, but with inflation, the attorneys made it 10. So that, I think, was Mr. Graw's suggestion.
So, move to reopen item 29 to amend my prior motion.
Okay.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Yep. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move item 29 with a finding under Title 19, Section 349, that the property is no longer needed for the county purposes, and that for good and valuable consideration of $10, it be transferred to DHS with a reversionary clause, subject to, as we discussed, something like for any lawful purposes within the Children and Juvenile Justice Code, solely for the purposes, and then pending correction of the legal description.
You got it. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I'm going to learn to be a lawyer. You guys are awesome.
Okay. Now, do you have any other further comments?
I do. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. And Commissioner Vaughn wishes once again that he could be here today, but he can't be, and he solicits your thoughts and prayers. Commissioner Vaughn, as some of you may know, has been recently diagnosed with prostate cancer, and diagnosed early. He's doing well. He knows that I'm telling you this because he covets your prayers and your support of the county family. And so he is starting treatment, and we are always hopeful. And I know that, we saw Commissioner Johnson, your bravery as you fought your cancer battle and beat it into the ground. And so I know that he draws on your strength. And so that's why he can't be here today. And again, we appreciate all of your support. And just if you have a moment, you might send up a prayer for Ray Vaughn and a speedy recovery so that we can get him back. And that just gives Rick and I a lot less work to do. Thank you.
Our prayers are with him.
Absolutely.
Jane, I believe you've got a braggadocious announcement to make.
Yes, I want to brag today. One of the people in my office, I think most of you are familiar with her, Amanda Madison, was named State Buyer of the Year.
All righty then.
So please go by and, if you will, say something to Amanda, and she'll be quite pleased to show her big plaque that she received as well.
That's awesome.
We're proud of her.
Well, there's a lot of people I would have nominated if I knew that they gave awards for shopping. So I think a lot of people in my family that could be buyers of the year. Okay.
Any new business? If not, we'll have the opening bids. Amber?
Good morning.
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 I have 3 bids this morning. The first bid is 11706089. That's for 4-foot-long LED lighting for the jail and detention center. TribalCom Wireless Solutions, Cornerstone Detention Products Incorporated, Gray Bar Electric Company, Hunziker Brothers Incorporated, and Boss Lighting. Second bid is CW 18022-1. This is for grocery products for the Juvenile Bureau. Buddy's Produce Incorporated, U.S. Foods, Dairy Pure, and the final bid is CW 18025-1. This is for highway materials and supplies for all 3 districts. PNC Asphalt, Dub Ross Company, Dolisi, Vance Brothers, Bernie Mathis Trucking, A&A Trucking Incorporated, General Materials Incorporated, Haskell Lemon Construction Company, Dolisi, Ergon Asphalt, Atlas Paving Company, Brown Transportation, Silver Star Construction Company, Martin Marietta Materials, Logan County Asphalt Company, and Kenna Metals. And that concludes the bid.
Move that be tabulated and signed.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Now is there a motion to adjourn?
Moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.